evening. We're all invited to take another terrifying journey into the world of mystery, suspense, and terror. Let's turn on all the lights, lock the doors and windows, sit back and enjoy this evening's chilling tale.
All right, well, thank you for tuning in to the Eek channel. My name is James, and today I am joined by my co-host,
Josh.
And today we have a special guest that we're going to give a call here in just a second. These are a couple folks from the Mighty Pen podcast. I think we're getting both of them on the line.
Cool.
But we might only have Joe, but we may also have Lily. We're going to find out. We're going to call them. We're going to talk about horror movies, talk about the stuff that they like and what is going on over theirs.
Let's do it.
Over theirs.
Over yonder.
All right, let's see what we can do here.
Hello.
Hey, is this Joe?
This is.
Hey, Joe, you have James and Josh here from the Eek Channel podcast. Josh, say hello.
Hello.
Hey, what's going on, guys? How you doing?
We are doing really, really well. How are you?
I'm better than average. Thanks for asking.
That is always good. I mean, that's a huge win, right? Better than average.
Right. Well, you can usually say that too. So it's the silver lining.
Yeah. All right, Joe. Well, before we get into deep here, let's just go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners, to let them know your name, what you do, all that kind of thing.
My name is Joe Vallen. You can find me pretty easily. So Google's a thing. And I've written a few things, and I've lived a very adventurous life. So I think that encapsulates me pretty well.
Perfect. That's perfect. All right, Joe. So the first question that we always like to talk to people about on our show here is about their horror origin story. So I know that based on some of the things that I've seen you've written, you definitely have a flair for the genre. So kind of how did you get into it, and kind of where did that all start for you?
Now, are we talking about like sort of real life? How did I get dark in the mind, or are we talking about what were my influences in the genre?
Oh, we can do both, my friend.
I like both.
You like both? Okay. All right. Well, I think, as any, but can we swear on your show? Are we
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Swear all you want.
Okay. I think as any byproduct of a fucked up childhood, there's only really two ways you can go. You could either succumb to it and become an actual monster, or you can embrace it and just fall into the horror community where you're embraced. And that's what happened to me. So,
all right.
I started off as a musician. I had an industrial band for a while. I was heavily influenced by like the Downward Spiral. I was 14 when that came out, so it hit me pretty hard.
Okay.
And a lot of other stuff. And then, a lot of horror films at the time, like, really stuck with me right up until, I fell into the sci-fi horror genres. And I started to realize that within horror, I wanted to write comedy, but it's like an MMA where, wrestling is a good base to learn all other martial arts.
Yeah.
In horror is like the wrestling of writing. If you could embrace horror, it makes your comedy a lot more funny when you put it on a backdrop of horror. So let's say I'm not that funny with my comedy, but I tell a joke in the midst of a horror construct. It's a lot funnier.
I like
so that. I learned about contrasts really by entering the genre first. So yeah.
All right. That sounds cool. I like that a lot. So yeah, what are some things that were influential to you as far as moving forward? Maybe some movies or things that you read earlier on in life that kind of got you into the genre.
Well, it was roundabout. My favorite book of all time was The Odyssey.
Okay.
And I look at Odysseus as like the first Batman, so that kind of led me into comics a little more. Spawn really hit me pretty hard.
Nice.
I just something about that story really appealed to me. I was fascinated by Dante's Inferno. His detailed description of hell. I was thinking like, who could have possibly made all that up?
Yeah.
And, that's how I feel about like the Necronomicon and books like that is like, shit, man, a lot of this stuff rings too true to be all made up, I suppose. I mean, I don't know if I'm just, if I want to believe some of this horrible crap, or if just some of it makes so much sense, I dare not turn my back on it.
Sure.
But I feel very comfortable there. Those are my waters. So just a huge film buff, guys. Anything dark was my thing. I was more goth in spirit than in dress.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's about it. I've just always felt comfortable with the awfulness of horror.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So here's a little game that we like to play around here. It's an elimination game.
Sure.
And it does put you on the spot just a little bit for maybe a potential unpopular opinion, and those are I think those are always fun.
Okay.
So if you had the opportunity to eliminate one movie, or could be a film franchise from the horror canon, what would that be for you?
Ooh, from the horror canon, I don't know. I was just gonna knee jerk. I was just gonna say Star Wars real quick, but then you said horror and you threw me a monkey wrench. Horror's not big enough.
I'm with you on that. I grew up in the '90s with all the re-releases, and of course the prequels coming out soon after that. And Josh here is a much bigger Star Wars fan than I am, and basically all of my friends are. And I realized it was really going to what was the first. Last Jedi, is that was the first of the comeback? Is that right? Force Awakens.
Force Awakens, yeah.
Whenever everybody was like all fucking amped about the Force Awakens, and I was like, oh yeah, I watched Star Wars as a kid. I think I like Star Wars, and so everybody's amped about it. We go to like this really late opening night showing, and like everyone's fucking losing their shit, and I'm like, oh, I think I realized that I'm not as into this as everybody else is.
Yeah, it's just it's like you're at the wrong party or something.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and anybody who had like an estranged father, like the original trilogy was so important to us because we learned how to be a man by watching Luke's journey, and it mattered so much to us. And then 30 years later, I get a guy drinking blue tit milk telling me throw this lightsaber over my shoulder and dies as a hologram on a fucking rock. Like, are you joking? I'm a writer, you son of a bitch. You just called me stupid for an hour and a half. So I get very upset by it. So if I want to answer your question honestly, I'd probably have to say the Scream franchise.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the reason being is because I believe the Scream franchise was the gateway to jocks liking horror, and I don't think that was really a good transition for us as a community.
That is super interesting and not incorrect. Huh.
Yeah, it brought in like, the popular preppy kids, and that's not who horror is for. Horror is Carrie getting revenge at her prom. Horror is us rooting for the people getting laid on the lake. Like they get hacked up, and we're like, yes, good for you. Like I was at home playing Doom. So I believe that horror was the more edgier dork genre, and I think Scream kind of made it for everyone, and I think it took away some of what made it special.
That's interesting. I really like that answer, and
thank you.
I love Scream personally, but
it's not bad. I just think it didn't help it didn't help the community in any way. I mean, even look at the actors in the franchise. It's like actors in traditional horror films. A lot of no names just become immortalized because they totally encapsulate these moments. But then when you bring in like these big names to play this, who cares? Fresh faces and shit. Like I don't care.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great answer. I appreciate that. We actually have kind of had a similar conversation. Actually, Josh, I think you talked to me about this about American Psycho.
No, I don't think that was me.
That wasn't you?
I don't think so.
Oh, I think it was.
Okay, keep going.
And just like how maybe it was Cody. I don't know, but just like how that movie kind of did the same thing of just like all of these like. So I saw that movie when it came out, and I thought it was okay. It didn't like rock my world or anything as far as a horror movie
Right,
goes.
same.
But I see now like a lot of people are like, oh, one of the best horror movies of the 2000s, and I'm like, what the fuck? I saw it once when it first came out. I've never looked at it again because like who gives a shit about that movie? But it's like this bro anthem of like, oh, this is what I look like on the outside, but I'm like really like intense and dark on the inside.
Right. What American Psycho did, in my opinion, is it brought in a lot of like, you know how when parents, you know how there's a lot of movies that are for the parents and the kids, so they'll both sit through it.
Absolutely.
American Psycho was a movie for the horror fan and his girlfriend.
Yes.
Because even if the girlfriend's not into it, she's into Christian Bale's abs. She's into, you know, and it's also set in the 80s too. So any quirkiness could be chalked up to, oh, it was the cheesy time.
Right,
so
right.
really what it does is it makes a timeless, fuckable character for a lot of women. And that's essentially it. And everybody likes the look of someone covered in blood. Like, now that's glam.
Right, right.
You know, when really, you know, guys like you and I and people that really understand horror know that blood is sticky and it's gross and it smells bad.
Right.
And it tastes like a burnt battery. But for some reason, every chick thinks it's cool for Halloween to be covered in blood. And it's like, you know, I understand. I mean, a true costume is something that you can disappear into a character you can't be any other time in the year. Right. So to me, I think it's just a cheap thing. American Psycho is kind of cheap. And I'm with you. I enjoyed it. I think it's a fine film. I think the Scream franchise is okay too. The way it's shot and directed, I'm okay with that. It's just it didn't touch my soul in any way.
Yeah, yeah. All right, man.
You know?
Well, what's maybe a couple things that are maybe you think kind of have flown under the radar, maybe just don't get as much attention as they should? Any recommendations that you might have for us or any of our listeners?
I would recommend that you guys check out my boys from the Guts podcast. That's all they do is they constantly talk about films that flew under the radar. So they're good with that. No competition between us podcasters. It's just,
absolutely.
They're amazing. I think you guys would get along with them really well.
Yeah. I've actually listened to their stuff. They're out of Houston, right?
Yep. Those are my boys. So I have them on my show on occasion.
Nice.
They recommend a lot of these, under the radar films. You know, there's a lot of them, guys. Anything George Romero, early, because a lot of the old stuff's not getting any play.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, Event Horizon, as much praise as it gets from us that know about it, from the people that don't know the genre, they'll just flip right by it. I would say the early Cube. I would say The People Under the Stairs. I would say, I don't know, Critters 1 is a fun camp movie to get into. All these are under the radar. I mean, unless you're 35 plus, you're not going to know about a lot of that crap.
Oh God, I think we just became best friends with all of the things that you just said. We actually do kind of have an ongoing argument between all of my co-hosts on whether the Cube series is good or not, because some days we think it's amazing and then other days we're like, these movies suck.
Right. And it's both. Both is correct in my opinion. I could be the non-partial ref if you like. I would say the Cube is both shitty and amazing. Because it captures like the Geiger stairs. Yeah. You know, if you remember the Geiger stairs, like to nothing and nowhere, and like, just this dustless environment that even if you broke out of the Cube, you'd still somehow feel claustrophobic. That to me is just horrifying. It touches you on a level that, you know, the writing doesn't have to be good. Sure. And the deaths don't have to be very clever. Although they are. And I mean, how many Cube films were there? 3?
3,
something?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah, I think I've seen 1. So I think I'm just speaking about the general concept of Cube.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me, it is completely horrifying to know that you're involved in a deadly game in some sort of weird cube. I've always sucked at the Rubik's Cube.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, I'm just thinking instant death. Plus, you don't know what the rules are, and you have to watch other people figure them out in front of you.
Right.
I don't know. It's just it's a clever trope.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree.
So I don't know. My 2 cents. I think it's both.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. All right, Joe. Well, we're getting kind of to the end of our time here, and so I just want you to kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that you've worked on. Let us know a little bit about the Mighty Pen, just everything you kind of have going on.
Okay, too much to list, guys, but you can find a lot of my information at joevallenwriter.com. Lily, right now, my manager / girlfriend, is making the mightypenpodcast.com. I think that'll be up by the end of this conversation.
Awesome.
I'm the author of the hit best-selling novel Unkillable Joe,
Yes.
which is about a really shitty comic creator who's a terrible writer whose characters come to life and confront him at the delight of the narrator until the narrator's own reality is threatened and he has to get involved. Very 16th wall breaking, I call it.
Nice.
I'm working on the sequel right now, and then I'm also the creator of the horror action thriller comic Lilith, Cradle, illustrated by Trey McCoy and Jeff West.
All right.
That is super dark, super sexy. You will never read anything like this. I guarantee it. I've designed it that way. And then I have a new horror comic come out. Think Powerpuff Girls meets Silent Hill, called Dear Hearts, and that's going to be a 2D side-scrolling platforming game.
Okay.
So
hell yeah.
you guys can plug into all that shit. The Mighty Pen Podcast is my podcast. I'd like to have you guys on at some point. I think we could have a fun time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Great. I do a role-playing element on my show called the Joe Venture, where I run you guys through a D&D style campaign at the end and try to kill you.
Oh, that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it. And that's about it, guys. I really appreciate you having me on. If anybody wants to help me out, patreon.com/Joe Vallen Writer. It's $1 for everything I do.
Oh,
$1.
Nice.
Silliness.
Yeah, that's a great model. All right, Joe, thanks so much for being on. You're an awesome guy. I already love your opinions, and I'm sure that I'm gonna love some of your work the more that I dig into it. So thanks so much. For being on with us.
Shoot me a link from this show, and I'll share it. And it was great meeting you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Have a nice night.
All right, take care.
He was nice.
Oh, he was so nice. That was fun, man. It's always we've gotten to have a couple like different types of creatives on lately, and it's just been really interesting. And of course that's what I want to be able to do for our show is to just continue to support people in the horror community, especially if they are making stuff, whether it be merch or writers or filmmakers or this guy who just is kind of got his hands in everything. And I think that's fucking sweet.
Yeah. I want to check all of it out.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely have to stream that game whenever that comes out.
No, when he said Powerpuff Girls, I was like, okay. Then he said Silent Hill, and I was on board. I love Silent Hill.
I love Silent Hill. That's my one movie that I wish would be remade as Silent Hill, just because I think the original came out in a time of really bad horror movies and a time of really bad video game movies, and so combining all those things together just was not as good as it should have been. Not that it was terrible, but it could have been much better.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I still stand in that camp. All right, well, that about wraps it up for this episode. If you'd like to help us out, you can rate, subscribe, comment, like, follow, enable notifications, all the internet things. Do that wherever you're listening to this. I don't know if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, or if you're on YouTube, whatever. Just do internet things that let people know that we exist. That's really what I'm asking you to do. And if you don't want to do any of that, that's also fine. Fuck all that shit. Tell somebody the show's pretty cool and they should check it out sometime. You can follow us on Instagram at EekChannel. That is EekChannel. And you can also check us out at eekchannel.com. Thank you so much for listening, and stay eeky out there.
This has been a production of Eek Channel. We make spooky stuff for people like you. You can discover more content like this at eekchannel.com, or find us on Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, all the places. And don't be shy, we like making new friends. Thank you for tuning in, and stay eeky out there.